Welcome everybody to another great episode of Sports, Movies, and Fun. This week we watched the great movie, probably one of the funniest movies that deals with sports that I've seen in Major League. You have me, Mike Valverde, my partner, Neiko Sigona. How you doing, Neiko?
Fantastic. Happy Sunday. And yeah, like you said, one of my favorite movies ever to watch. And I'm just so excited to do this show. So, Mike, why don't you take it away and tell us a little bit about this, the beginning of this, how it all got to it.
Perfect. So we're in the very beginning of the movie. We're introduced to Randy Newman's song, Cuyahoga River. And basically, the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland was completely polluted with like oil, chemicals, debris. It was so bad at one point that it caught on fire 13 times. All this during like 1969 and before. And basically what it did was it awakened and started an environmental movement. It was so bad that people started saying, okay, maybe we should do something about this, something about the environment, because before then people would just dump whatever into rivers and streams and whatever else, and it would just cause so many problems. I think that the reason why they chose that song, not only is it a great song, but it sort of amplifies what the Indians are about. Waste, chemicals, debris, everything about that is sort of much the Cleveland Indians. They weren't always bad. 1948, that was the last time they won the World Series. That was interesting enough. The Cleveland Indians beat the Boston Braves in 6 games. Then in 1954, they returned to the World Series and lost to the Giants. That was the one Willie Mays over the basket catch. The Giants cleaned them out 4 straight games, won that 4-0. And then they made one other appearance, which was interesting enough because as we see later in the movie where Rachel Phelps, who owns the team, wants to move to Miami. Well, their last World Series appearance in Cleveland for the Indians was against the Florida Marlins. So they ended up losing against Florida, who plays in Miami in 1997. But they have not been or not won a World Series since 1948. That was the last time they, with the Red Sox winning and the Cubs winning the World Series, the Cleveland Indians at this point are the lowliest team without a World Series title, as I mentioned, back to 1948. As far as the movie is considered, it made $50 million in the theaters and it cost only $11 to make. So they got a big turn on investment. And I know you want to talk about a little bit about your experiences with this. Why don't you go ahead and fill us in on what that's about, Neiko?
Yeah, absolutely. I always try to choose movies or give you options of movies that will kind of reflect on the current times. And right now, as we see the Washington football team change their name and Dan Snyder finally back down from his, staunch, his total rejection of, I will never change the name of the Washington football team. And then FedEx put some pressure on him. He was like, yeah, I'm good. I got you. Just funny to see what money and what big investors do. So kudos to FedEx for putting a little bit of pressure on him, perhaps a little too late, but, it is working. One thing I want to talk about, Mike, is that my family, we are part Native, and my little brother is much more involved with the tribe, working with the tribe than I am. And he's always kind of been the one to call things to my attention. We grew up in a Catholic household, went to Catholic high school. So, just growing up, we're taught a lot of, romantic ways of the mission, the missions of California, bringing peace and, helping build the West Coast. When in reality, a lot of those things are, there's a lot of atrocities and a lot of horrible things that happen to natives especially in California and all over. So, in regards to the Cleveland Indians, I have this Cleveland hat, and this is an old school hat. I'm a hat collector ever since I got my first paycheck as a little 13-year-old. And I went, boom, bought some hats. And I like retro hats. My little brother right away chastised me when I got this hat because of the depiction of the, big red cheek, cheery, Chief Wahoo looking guy. It's just is a very racial kind of caricature of, a native that perhaps isn't the most PC thing to show when we have millions of people watching these games. Now, Cleveland did change it. I believe if you can see the C right here, I don't know when they changed it, but I do remember when they got popular when they went in 2007. They were doing really well, and they just lost to the Red Sox in the ALCS, but they changed it to the C, and that block C became much more popular. So I think for the Indians, it's much easier for them because it's not more of a racial epithet. It's just kind of a term, right? Whereas the Washington team is much more offensive to individuals, right? But Mike, when you look at it from people like you and me, right, people that are football fans that identify as white males, it's tough. Like I grew up with the Washington team. I didn't really have a problem saying it. You know what I mean? I had buddies that were fans of the team, and we all talked about it. And I think it's just because perhaps we're desensitized to it because we see it every Sunday, and you hear this word so much that is almost, it was given an affectionate nickname where they cut it in half. Right. And they gave the, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of weird that the moniker became and something that, and not to get too political, but Trump has been, pushing the fact that, 9 out of 10 natives don't find the name offensive. Well, it's like perhaps, that pulls a little, bias, but also I think a lot of people are desensitized. Right. Sure. So, yeah, what do you think about that? The whole thing with the Washington name, and then also with the Atlanta Braves getting rid of the tomahawk chop like they did a couple of years ago, and now with the Indians trying to get rid of the, Chief Wahoo, or perhaps moving into a more not having the Chief Wahoo ever in the, stadium. How does that make you feel? Because for us, it's kind of tradition. It's old school. It's retro baseball and football. But now for the newer generations coming up and for our sports seasons in 2020 and beyond, is going to be a much different landscape and atmosphere.
Yeah, and spending more time on this earth as you have than you have, and having that Redskins, Indians, I've always felt the Redskins, even as a kid, was an extreme racist name. I never could understand how that was always part of a team and how that was allowed. I remember being a kid just going, I don't understand this, but then, you don't spend a lot of time on it. You don't, do anything about it because what can you really do? Even now, you could sign a petition, you can do whatever, but as you say, what really makes motivation, what makes the change is when people start pulling money like FedEx Field did. Believe me, and I know you know this, that the Washington Redskins name would never change if money wasn't involved. That would still be what it is today. And so it's just one of those things where you just deal with it and you understand what it is, but you just keep going on with it. As far as the tomahawk chop, I've always felt I hated it. I hated it when the Braves and the Giants were in 95, 96, when the Braves won 105 games and the Giants won 103 games. 93. And hearing that tomahawk chop when they were playing used to drive me absolutely. Not only did it drive me crazy because it was the Braves beating the Giants, but it was so absolutely racist. And so it was those two things. I always thought that should go. As far as the Indians name, I don't find it racist. To me, It's just Indians. It's just, so I'm like, okay, whatever with that. But Chief Wahoo, oh, man, that was another thing from my days growing up with the Redskins, looking at Chief Wahoo. And it is in the movie in the very beginning, as they're showing the years going by and the pictures, especially when they show the Giants beating the Indians in that little image, you see just a total bucktooth, feather, just total racist image of Chief Wahoo. And just the name itself, Chief Wahoo, is all racist, and that needs to go. So if the Indians need to change anything, primarily, I would hope that they would work with Chief Wahoo, change the name, change the image, get rid of all that, and then, like you say, just use a block C or whatever other kind of character they can come up with that's not racist.
Yeah, and I think they have been doing a lot of things to remove the Chief Wahoo, from their uniform, from their apparel and everything. And it's, it's nice to see that. But also, like I said, with the box C and doing this about a decade ago, they really got ahead of the curve. And I think they I don't know if they foresaw it coming or whatever they were able to do, but they did this in a more manageable way, a more smoothed over way. You know what I mean? So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Mike, so talking more about the movie, one of my favorite scenes is or one of my favorite things to talk about in the movie is when the new owner gets them, right? She has no desire to stay in Cleveland. She wants to take her talents to South Beach. You know what I mean? And so when you see this, it's kind of funny because obviously we've seen LeBron James leave Cleveland to go to Miami, win a bunch of championships, and then come back, right? And Cleveland was just, heartbroken and burning his jersey, all this stuff. For the Indians, her goal was to get under 800,000 total fans for the year. Boom, move out to Miami, get a new, yacht, get into a country club, all that good stuff. But yeah, like you said, one of the Indians' last opportunities to win a World Series was in '97, right? And Edgar Renteria hits a base hit up the middle to beat them. They lost against the Cubbies in '16 when I was so desperately wanting them to win because I was at the game where the Cubbies beat the Giants and it was just horrible for the NLDS. So I was like, I had a vendetta on them. I needed the Cubs to beat the Dodgers, but then I needed the Indians to beat the Cubs, and it just didn't work out. But when you look at this, Mike, when you look at the theme of tanking, right, you see teams like Philadelphia 76ers, right? You see teams that are really okay losing. Right. Perhaps the Carolina Panthers won't be that good on offense this year because they drafted 7 guys on defense, but they're cool with the process. So when you have the process, perhaps it's easier in football and basketball where from the draft you get right into, the pro league. But in baseball, we have so many levels of minor leagues. Usually, right now we don't have that because of COVID, but usually you have so many levels of minor league baseball. It's a lot harder to kind of tank and just be like, oh yeah, I'll draft the top guys the next couple of years and they should be starters in 1 year. That doesn't really happen that much in baseball. So when you look at it, when you see the Indians tanking, but in the movie, when you see the Indians tanking, it's a purely selfish thing. It's not something to rebuild. It's not a process. It's not trying to get the team better. It's trying to benefit the owners. And we see that in Miami, right? We saw that in Miami with Loria when he was just selling off pieces left and right. Oh, you want Yelich? You want Ozuna? Cool. Here's Giancarlo Stanton. You take him too. And it's like, dude, you just traded away 3 of the best outfielders we've ever seen combined, since God knows. You know what I mean? It's kind of infuriating to see that from owners, but they have a bottom line, just like FedEx pushing Dan Snyder with the Washington team. There's a bottom line, and that's what usually matters most to these owners. So kind of a long-winded question, Mike, but when you look at teams like this, I mean, is it obvious to see that baseball teams tanking is it's a pretty hard thing to do unless you're the Astros and you have a lot of trash cans and first-round picks?
I think, it really is so hard to do that. How many teams have actually we know it happens, right? But how many teams have been on the stake for it? How many teams have been penalized for it? So as we've even seen with the Astros, it was so obvious that even the Astros aren't even going to get penalized for it. So it's that difference between knowing it happens and actually penalizing a team for it happening. So is it really happening if they're not really getting penalized for it? And I think that's sort of the difference is where do you actually draw the line? And if the line is drawn, then what about the teams that were under that line? Do they count as being, tanking to get better draft choices? So it's such a blurry situation that it's almost where you can just say that no teams are really tanking, but even though you can totally see that it happening, that it is. So it's one of those, I guess, questions that we'll never have an answer to. But and I even forgot what your question was, to be honest with you.
No, we covered it. It was a very broad question about tanking, but yeah, it's easy to see in baseball, especially that, when these teams are losing, it's going to be a losing culture for a long time. And it's really tough to get out of that cellar. It's really tough to kind of climb back. And you don't see a lot of worst to first happenings in the MLB, where it's a little easier with basketball or football. If you draft a dynamic quarterback or a fantastic, shooting guard or something like that, that's able to play 2 ways, you know what I mean? Compared to a first baseman, it's going to hit, once every 9 batters and, get the ball hit to him perhaps maybe 3-4 times a game. It's much more of a team sport, and the whole 25-man roster really, really contributes to that. Now, Mike, when we look at the 25-man roster of Major League, you and I got to pick some of our favorite characters. And before I start getting into mine, is there someone you want to talk to us about? Lead us off with one of your favorite characters, because this whole movie is really based on building up the characters, loving them, and obviously they don't want to show a whole 162 game season, but they're trying to get us to feel with the ups and downs of a major league season. So, I always ask, you always love these character arcs and everything. But, when you look at these characters, which character, why did you choose the ones that you chose? And I'll let you start off.
Okay, so I have a partiality to catchers. I always have a partiality to catchers. So Jake Taylor is probably the lead. Is the act. Tom Burgess is the lead pretty much in the movie. And as you say, there's a lot of great moments, but they're really comedic moments. There's nothing really that very serious outside. I mean, even the love scene between him and Rene Russo was sort of comedic because he's having to name like the character that was at the end of Moby Dick, and he's like, your zipper stuck, well, use your imagination, and and he uses his cleats to pull off the dress, and all that different stuff. And I think my favorite part with Jake Taylor was in the very beginning when they're out trying to recruit him. The general manager's out there recruiting him, and he calls him up, and he's in the Mexican League with his big sombrero, and he's like, he calls him up and say, hey, we need you to come to the Indians and play catcher. And he's like, is that you, Tolbert? At least you could do is say you're from the Yankees, and just totally slams and hangs up on him. I think that's totally probably one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. And then, as other characters are involved, like Ricky Vaughn, what do you see maybe as a character arc and some of your favorite scenes with Ricky Vaughn?
Yeah, I'm happy that you chose him because I wanted to talk about him and Jake Taylor, or the, Tom, the actor, because they were together in Platoon, right? If I recall. So right before they played in, they both acted in Platoon, and then they went on to the next one for Major League together. So it's just funny that they would be, platoon mates, and then they would be battery mates in the movie.
Oh, that's totally cool. I never even put that together.
Yeah, right. I was watching some YouTube videos today, and I saw that, and I was like, whoa! Like I totally forgot. It was a totally different. They have the guns and everything. They're all crazy, and then in Major League, they have crazy haircuts and just caring about baseball. So it was a little easier to watch with my heart rate not so through the roof. Watching that one. But Charlie Sheen really got into that character, Mike. We obviously all know how crazy he's gotten, or perhaps not crazy, but how
crazy.
Okay, crazy, right? Away from normal.
Yeah.
And he was talking about in this movie, there's speculation. He kind of, confirms it that he was taking steroids to juice up to throw harder. And he said, I got up to 85. So, for pitchers, you see a lot of people that look very unathletic. In all these baseball movies. I was just watching The Rookie, and that's actually one of the most athletic movies I've seen because Dennis Quaid's in it, right? He's not that athletic because he's supposed to be a lefty throwing upper nines, and nobody can do that properly in real life anyway, besides Chris Sale and Chapman. But, you're seeing all these players at the tryouts look athletic and such. It's just funny, Ricky Vaughn or, Charlie Sheen, he really practiced and worked hard. But also he took steroids and partied hard, and his crazy haircut actually got him in an altercation at a bar when he was done shooting the movie, or after one of the scenes he's done, goes out to a bar and he's so on edge from the roids he's taking, and someone starts razzing him about his haircut that he got in a fight, and he's like, okay, perhaps I've gone a little too deep into this character. But when you look at it on the film, he comes in there with his short sleeves, he comes out of the the detention center, he comes out there with his short sleeves and no hat, and the coach is like, all right, at this level, we were sleeves and hats, son. Like, right? Just like totally funny stuff like that. But then he throws 99, breaks the board and everything. But
yeah, I've garbage bag for a suitcase and
yeah, right. He hops off the motorcycle to get. Oh god, yeah. That one really cracked me up. But he's kind of like that bad boy, just like craziness. Everybody's kind of revolved around him, and it's funny that a lot of closers, a lot of American-born closers seem to kind of take on a little bit of that persona. Maybe not so much craziness, but the walk-up songs or whatnot. I just totally think of Brian Wilson just coming, crazy beard, jet black hair. I don't know if he dyed his beard or whatnot, just throwing upper nines. People like Rob Nen just blowing out their UCL, just trying to throw upper nines and just blow smoke for those last 3 outs. So I definitely think Charlie Sheen played a big part, not only in the movie, but also in professional baseball, on how like the wild boy, like crazy closer continued to grow. Obviously you had the Reds, you have the crazy, the red bullpen and everything, but, just kind of seeing it grow and grow more and more. Yeah, it was just a lot of fun to watch. Did you have any, I know Charlie Sheen's one of the best actors in this and one of the, more favorite characters. Do you have anything that you, saw that you wanted to bring up, or anything that kind of stood out to you in this movie in regards to his character or tying it to other characters?
I think one of the things that I liked, of course, was the glasses. When he talking about character glasses, where he goes from these blue weird frame things to where I think even Willie Mays Hayes is like, they're talking about seeing is the most. The manager Lou Brown's like, seeing is the most important thing, son, and Wesley Snipes is like, seeing ain't that important. It just, that's how bad the glasses were, and then go from that to the hardcore black with the skull, and I know that's one of your favorite scenes. Why don't you talk about that?
One of the scenes that I really enjoyed, and it was about Charlie Sheen coming into the whole wild thing and how the crowd kind of gets behind it. For me, it totally reminds me of Don't Stop Believin' from the Giants, right? From 2007 to 2009, the Giants were absolutely trash. And one of the favorite things we had was either seeing Lindsey Cumber, Matt Cain pitch, or just going there to hear the songs, right? I Left My Heart in San Francisco with Tony Bennett if they won. You have all these crazy songs, but Don't Stop Believin' became a huge song for us. And we would just scream it at the top of our lungs. And now, granted, as the Giants started winning World Series, the Journey, the lead singer from Journey, they're all there and everything. And it kind of got overplayed. So I kind of chuckled when I heard the owner like, oh, not this song again. Because, as the movie goes on, every time they sing, Wild Thing, like the owner's just like, shut the F up. Right. And so like a small percentage of me gets that, because every time I hear Journey now, like I play it at my baseball camp all the time because my little guys love it. But for me, I'm like, dude, I've heard this song so many times in the last like 12 years, but I love it so much. I'm like, play it through, let it go. But I don't know, just kind of cracks me up that a fan base can get so behind a song. They did a good job of showing that in the movie. Whether it's you have Sweet Caroline in Boston, right? I think that Neil Diamond song, like, no offense to Neil Diamond, I don't like that song until they go bum bum bum, right? Just because for me, I'm either like, pretending I'm in a bar, or I'm somewhere, in Boston screaming while Big Papi hits a dinger, off the Yankees, or something crazy like that, right? So it's funny to see, all these teams get behind these songs and really embody it and kind of, take it on as their own persona. So for me, for the Giants, hearing that, it kind of galvanized us towards the playoffs. Hearing this one, Wild Thing, I kind of like, it was kind of poking fun at Ricky Vaughn, who couldn't hit, he couldn't hit waters off of both. He needed to throw a strike, but still at the same time, it's like, hey, you know what? This guy's, he's wild. We're going to accept it. We're going to take it. We're going to embrace it. And guess what? When he strikes out people, going to go freaking crazy.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the big heavy hitter for the Yankees at that, was actually a pro baseball player, Peter Vukovich.
Yeah.
And he
Serbian.
And he was just a pitcher. Yeah. But by the looks of it, man, that dude looked like he could just do what he did in the movies, just launch them.
Right.
And yeah, so interesting enough, as you bring up the songs too, Sweet Caroline, they actually do that with the Sacramento River Cats. That's their song too. So you got of course the one from Journey, and then now of course Sweet Caroline all together. Another great character, of course, is Willie Mays Hayes. Plays like Hayes, runs like Mays. What did you think of him as far as just, that was probably it's got to be one of Wesley Snipes' first movies, and just that whole character of Willie Mays Hayes.
Well, I think between Willie Mays, the character and the director, they did a great job, because he's not that fast. So they're talking about they had a lot of problems with making him look like a blazing base stealer.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was funny to see. I think a lot of his running scenes are in slow motion, right? Whether it's like he wakes up, in the bed and he's it's tryouts. He's like, I've already been cut, and he gets out. He runs a 60 and he outruns him in slow motion, or he's stealing a base in slow motion, or the last play with Jake Taylor where it's a run and bunt and he rounds the third base and scores, in slow motion. But yeah, I thought they did a good job of that, because they don't let him, kind of like in 42. I thought Chadwick did a great job, but he looked a little unathletic on the bases, whereas this movie was able to kind of slow it down, so you nothing has to look athletic in slow motion. You're like, yeah, whatever, that could happen, right? We don't know the body that well, so it's great to see. But I think Willie Mays Hayes plays such a great character, and he has so many people kind of, tailor the game after him. A lot of speedy center fielders, a lot of my friends, they'd have a lot of swag, but they couldn't hit a ball out of the infield, right? So, okay, hit it on the ground. And just funny watching this because there's so many personalities in the lineup and in the staff and on the coaching staff. You know what I mean? It's just fun to see, how spot on a lot of this is about baseball. The director obviously is a huge Indians fan, and he said, I know the Indians aren't going to win a World Series, so the only way I could do it is if I write it into existence. But no one's going to believe it, so it better be a comedy. So that's kind of where the comedic twist came, because he's like, no one's realistically going to just, be like, oh yeah, the Indians really won it all. They have the natural or something like that. You know what I mean? Where, it's not like a movie about Marius or, Mansell. So I thought that Willie Mays Hayes really did a great job of kind of embodying the whole, okay, we'll get this player for cheap, but, hopefully he works out. But if not, you never know. And that's what baseball is all about. A lot of times you take a flyer on a kind of toolsy, fast guy, and boom, they turn out to be a great player with the, proper coaching. One funny thing I want to mention, Mike, I watch a lot of YouTube videos about hitting because I need to watch people that are smarter than myself so I can coach kids. So I'm watching these videos about these pro hitters. I forgot it was like Arenado or Dawes. I forgot it was somebody, or maybe it was DeRosa, but someone was making a joke about, Tony Gwynn gave him I think it was DeRosa. But I think Tony Gwynn gave him a hitting drill or a hitting tip, and he's like, man, I was like Willie Mays Hayes. I hit every single ball off the top of the, the little batting cage, netting, and he was cracking up. He's like, man, and he's just talking about that. So it's funny to see that on MLB Tonight, this is probably like in 2012, 2013-ish, that it was, Willie Mays Hayes still to that day. All you had to do is just mention, I was hitting like Willie Mays Hayes, boom, right away. Ball, you're in BP and you're hitting the ball straight up. You know what I mean? So yeah, that really got me going. That really just made me think like, man, I do love this movie so much. And that was why I was so happy when you gave this to me as an option to choose, from the movies that we were able to choose such a great film.
I in that whole thing, I really want to see a pro player actually hit the ball up and then start doing push-ups. I mean, that has to be done sometime, some way, in some spring training game, some meaningless game where, the guy just hits it up in the air and it's like, I got to do push-ups now.
Drops that. Especially with launch angle, right? Nowadays, everyone's just swinging straight up anyway, so I'm sure there's plenty of opportunities. That ball just goes, 150 feet in the air, but 10 feet forward.
Hit the ground, bro.
Right, exactly. Now talking about big guys that hit the ball high in the air and also far, Pedro Cerrano was a great character as well. Yeah. Now, real quick, a little tidbit about him, Mike. I didn't know he's from San Mateo. So he's from my neck of the woods. For those of us that don't know where San Mateo is, it's kind of about 20 minutes south of San Francisco. And he's from an area that, Barry Bonds, Tom Brady, Lynn Swan, like all those guys went to Sarah High School in San Mateo. So yeah, it was just kind of cool to see that Dennis Haysbert was, is from the Bay. And then, obviously, he's portraying more of, I think, like a Dominican or, a Caribbean player. What was it?
Cuban,
sorry. I always get mixed up, right? Dominican and Cuban. We gotta be better about that in baseball. Just assuming everyone's Dominican. But no. So yeah, he has his rituals and his ways that definitely clash with the Christian, beliefs of was it Harris? Right? You should take the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Blah blah. And they're talking like, you're telling me Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?
Ayúdame en este momento para que me des el poder para conquistar el curveball. Te daré mi devoción para siempre poderoso.
¿Qué pasa there, Pedro?
Bats. They are sick. I cannot hit curveball. Straight ball, I hit it very much. Curveball, bats are afraid. I asked Jobu to come. Take fear from bats. I offered him cigar and rum. He will come.
You might think about taking Jesus Christ as your savior instead of fooling around with all this stuff.
Shit, Harris.
Jesus. I like him very much. But he no help with curveball.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?
That's got to be one of the most iconic lines, from the movie, if not any baseball movie, because for those of us that have played baseball, hitting a curveball is so damn hard. And it's just so much movement and so much timing all thrown off. And the whole movie, his character arc is really around the curveball, right? He can't hit a curveball. He crushes fastballs. And in the first day of spring training, the coach was like, wow, How is he not signed? Like, all right, it's enough fastballs. Give him the junk. Whiff, right? And the whole movie just shows him whiffing on curveballs, and finally he goes, "F you, Jobu. I don't need it anymore." Right? Down 2 strikes, 2 outs, and hits a hanging breaking ball, clear out of the stadium. But his character arc was definitely, portrayed by the curveball arc. And I thought that was quite funny because, he has, so many great scenes. But, for me, the ones that stand out the most, above all the, the voodoo or, praising Jobu or, putting the golf thing on his bat, like the golf cover
Hats
from
for
Dorn.
bats.
Right? Hats for bats. And he's just like sitting there. Because even like my buddies and I, we always joked around, like, if someone had a rosary, we'd rub the rosary on the bat, right? If somebody had something, like, we'd always, okay, take care of your bat, or you get a new Marucci, okay, sleep with it. It's the nicest bat you'll ever have in your life. Just, showing the care he had of his bat and, his craft was quite interesting. So what stood out to you? Obviously I still think of Allstate commercials every time I see him. Every time, right? You're in good hands. Like, it's just like, it's great job, Allstate. Like, fantastic, job casting. But yeah, for you, when you look at Cerrano and his character, what kind of stands out to you besides the fact that he can't hit a curveball?
I think the fact that I really liked his whole interaction with Jobu and his whole belief system. Very bad to steal Jobu's rum. Very bad. And what does Harris do? Of course, he steals the rum from Jobu, and then right away, boom, bat flies, hits him in the head. I think you touched on it. One of my favorites, if not my favorite scene in the whole movie, was when he is that scene where he's down 2 strikes and takes the bat and says, basically, screw you, Jobu, I'll do it myself. And I think that was the complete character arc right there in that scene. And so many people rely on so many different things to help them that really what they need to do is just realize they can do it themselves. And I thought that was, in a movie that was complete comedy gold, that was a perfect poignant moment and serious in a great time and then, of course, he hits the home run and then takes the bat and runs on every single base.
Oh, wow, Bregman and Juan Soto.
Yeah. It's like, okay, but other than that, yeah, I thought it was a great moment.
I'm happy you brought that up, Mike, because I was cracking up last night when I was thinking about it when he's running around the base of the bat, and I was like, we all clown on Bregman and Soto for doing this, but we all forget that he was doing this in the 1989 movie. But I just thought it was hilarious just seeing that. Totally reminded me of how tense the last World Series was, and bringing the bat to first base and dropping it after a huge home run, and then the other team doing it, following up. It was just it was awesome to see that, and that definitely struck me as awesome. Now, speaking of, I keep using the word awesome. Speaking of awesome, the directors and the writers, their insight and their knowledge of baseball seemed quite awesome to me because, like you said, when Cerrano's able to kind of ditch all these other things and just be like, I got you. That is such a big thing in the batter's box. So many times we go into the batter's box with a crazy state of mind, or we have mom and dad cheering for us. We have a coach giving us signs and screaming at us. We have a runner on first base, so the pitcher's going out of the out of the stretch instead of the windup, and there's different timing. So many times that we're just overthinking it instead of just like taking a deep breath and just be like, all right, let's go, you and me, I got you. So that is such a baseball thing, and that was awesome to show that it's obviously a very Hollywood ending where it's he ties the game and then what a great home run, blah blah blah. But really, like when you see that happen very rarely in baseball, where a person is just grinding and striking out and messing up nonstop, getting to see them hit that off-speed pitch or getting to see them succeed against something that they consistently fail against is the epitome of baseball. So I thought that was just, super well done, spot on, and nailed it, just like they nailed Bob Uecker. So before I just gush about my favorite announcer in the whole wide world, I'm so sorry, John Miller. You're, number 1 at B, right? But, before I start getting him, Mike, do you want to give us a little bit about Bob, just what a genius he is, how fantastic and how funny he is?
Yeah, and a lot of things. In fact, they hired him. When they put him on, they had no idea that he was actually the Milwaukee Brewers radio broadcaster. So that was like a sort of a quiet surprise for them. And then he was also in the show Mr. Belvedere. And the whole reason why I watched Mr. Belvedere was because of Major League. And the way he would talk about his own career. who was a horrible hitter. I think he finished his career as a lifetime 200 hitter. And then just would talk about him, and just as you mentioned, one of the greats of baseball announcers. So comedy was really easy for him, not only in real life, but as we've seen with Mr. Belvedere and Major League. But other than that, I think that pretty much, as far as what I'm concerned, covers it. What about the movie and you and what you saw?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's just such a storyteller. I would constantly watch YouTube clips on him, right? Whether it's calls from the Brewers, whether it's, his shows with, I think, Johnny Carson, I forgot who he's going on, right? But he's going on all these different shows, late night shows. And I just wanted to watch as much Bob Uecker as possible because he was so funny and he was such a gifted storyteller, just bringing you along for the ride and making you feel at ease. A lot of times you hear these stories and a little kind of choppy, or they kind of delivered a little bit off, and it's kind of, it's a good story, but it's not. He's one of those guys who's just like, every story he tells is gold. It just turns out so funny. And that's why I compare him to John Miller, because, us Giants fans are so blessed to have John Miller, Kruk and Kipe, Fleming, all these great guys. But still in my mind, like, man, I would probably want to listen to Uecker. But, just looking in this movie.
Vaughn into the windup in his first offering. Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
I have said that my whole life. My dad says it all the time. I coach kids, in baseball. And so obviously, I'm teaching kids how to pitch at 7, 8 years old, and they're just throwing 40 feet left. I'm just a bit outside. Or a lot of times I'm throwing BP. I'll throw it right down the middle. But I don't want to call it strike three. I'm like, just a bit off. You know what I mean? So we have these little variations or these little things that we do totally from Bob Uecker in my baseball camp. And we're all pretty young kids. I'm one of the older ones that, teach the younger groups of kids. So it's kind of funny, the hearing my assistant coach or hearing somebody else, I'd be like, oh, haha, Bob Uecker, because, a lot of people past my younger than me, it's maybe not as known a movie or not as known a name as Bob Uecker. But yeah, he is just, even the part, Mike, where he's like, oh, you could hear this crowd going crazy, right? And then he and the color man, start yelling, woo, going nuts and everything. And I like, too, that they let him have a little bit of a rated R version on this, right? He's pouring a little bit of whiskey. Thank God he's out, right? He's like covering the microphone and doing little things like that, or, gives it to his color commentator. And what do you think? Yep. Hey, I don't call him the best color commentator in the world for nothing, huh? Or something just like stuff like little things like that. It was just so quick and so funny and so witty. And real quick, while I was going down the YouTube rabbit hole, I found a little bit about Bob Uecker where he saw Robin Yount and some other players were in Detroit after a day game, and Detroit gets pretty shut down at the end of night. So at that time, and so they're running. 5 of them are walking from a restaurant back, and Uecker sees them. So he jumps out and starts, yelling at them like he's a military personnel, top brass man. So he has them line up, and he's like, okay, we're going to march down these last 4 blocks. So they're marching in the middle of the road, marching. And then the cops, Detroit Police Department pull up and we're like, sir, what are you doing? And then he goes back, what are you doing? He actually ends up getting them in line. So the 2 officers they march down 4 blocks to the hotel with Uecker and the Brewers. They drop him off at the hotel. They salute all of them and they say, have a great game tomorrow.
That's cool.
Like, Uecker is able to tell the cops, like, yeah, I'm walking in the middle of the street, and you're also going to walk in front and behind us down 4 blocks, leave your car there, and you're going to wish us a good game tomorrow because that's how funny I am. And, like, just seeing his personality, like, man, like, that is some brave, that is some funny stuff that he has and he offers to this baseball world.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's really a treat that happens. And as you mentioned with the bit outside, I do that. I'll watch the Giants game and wild pitch off, 50 feet off the plate and tried the corner and missed. It's just,
I don't know how they're laying off such close pitches.
Yeah, exactly. So many people do that, and it's just one of those great moments. And that's one of the great things about this movie is there's so many great moments that people still, carry through, and a lot of those are from Bob Uecker as the announcer for the Indians.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, people look at that movie and they think of that movie, and sometimes, instead of Charlie Sheen or, some of the other actors stand out, you think of Bob Uecker. And for me, my favorite character is Bob Uecker. I mean, obviously Taylor has, some great stuff, and, Vaughn has some, great stories as well. But for me, as a, nonstop talker that grew up listening to baseball instead of watching baseball, just hearing the way Uecker breaks things down and kind of, brings you to this, fairyland for, baseball and funny stories. It's just like, you're in a whole new world, and there's just like not a problem in the world, right? That's it. And I think that's what a lot of radio announcers kind of miss out on nowadays, because so many of us have these quick imaginations that have 40 screens going all the time, and to have an announcer just break it down and tell you what's happening while you can close your eyes and kick back, that is a very rare treat nowadays.
I think another thing too, someone who has a total great voice was Lou Brown, the manager, and he's sitting there in Tire World.
Tire World.
Oh, look, this is Charlie Donovan with the Cleveland Indians. How would you like to manage the Indians this year?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? This is a chance to manage in the big leagues.
Let me think it over, will you, Charlie? I got a guy on the other line about some white walls. I'll talk to you later.
And that's just how bad the Indians were. Like, he didn't even want to. He wanted to be in Tire World instead of managing the Indians. What did you think of his character as far as the manager and peeing on Roger Dorn's contract and all those great things?
Yeah, it was kind of funny because he looks like such like a prototypical old, white man manager. And it's just like, you know what I mean? Like when you think of baseball, like he looks like a manager like, 10, 20 years ago, like that you would have, 90% of the, across the board. Now it's a little more diverse, right? We're bringing some more people in, we're getting better about baseball. But, my freshman year of college up at a small school in Washington, our head coach, RIP, passed away recently, but he looked and talked just like, the manager from in the movie, right? And it was so funny to see just a gruff, big voice, huge hands, big mustache. All right, here's how we're going to do it out here. Like, and my coach came from a football background, so he was even more kind of, like rah, like, all you baseball sissies are going to have to learn. So it was just funny, like, when I saw that coach, I was like, oh, I've seen this coach before. And now, I kind of see it. And then you see, as I coach against other coaches, I see people that look like Coach Lou Brown. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, like this is hilarious. Like the talk, the walk, the way he, runs his field and has that kind of gruff, like, no love lost type, personality. I don't know. It just cracks me up. But, I'm definitely going to say a few things, about from him on my practices, because we have some kids that show up to practice without a hat. I'm like, in my mind, I just want to cuss him out. I'm like, why are you not wearing a hat? You're 14 years old. This is baseball practice. Like, you need a hat, right? But I want to take something from, what he said. Okay, at this level, we wear sleeves and hats, right? Like, just like kind of joke and like, okay, maybe be a little lighter on the kids. But, it's funny that his gruff personality can help me be a little bit nicer to the kids, on certain wardrobe malfunctions. If they look a little too much like Vaughn.
and then just the way he sort of like related, he knew how to talk to the players like Willie Mays Hayes in the very beginning, where he makes that sort of showman catch where he sort of just like one-handed and a total character catch, and he comes running in and Lou Brown's like, great catch, Hayes, don't ever do it again. It's just he knew that he needed to appreciate Willie Mays for what he did first, to get into his mind that, hey, great catch, but don't ever do that again.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's really missed a lot by baseball coaches. It's such a game of failure that, sometimes when they do something that ends up being positive or correct for your team, but they did it in a wrong manner, you have to be very careful with how you kind of condition their mind or how you approach them. So a lot of times, it's funny in that scene, right? Willie Mays Hayes comes in, all his fielders are high-fiving him. Everyone's, oh, yeah, great job. And, Lou Brown's waiting on the step, hey, gives him a little bit, great job, but don't you ever effing do that again, right? And it's just funny to see that, because a lot of times as a coach, I have to sit back, right? The kid makes a diving catch, right? But then tries to do a double play and throws the ball away to first base, and now the kid gets to third base. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you made a diving catch to rob due to the hit, but now the runner that was on got 2 free bases because you threw the ball, right? So it's like sometimes you have to be careful with how do we approach this, and how do we construct them in a positive way? How do we construct our words in a positive manner that's not too aggressive or too like rah. And it's funny that even in the late 80s where this movie takes place, Coach Brown has the ability and the wherewithal to see, okay, Willie Mays Hayes is a little bit more of an ego, a little bit more of a maybe a fragile personality. You can't really poke this bear too much.
Right, exactly. And when he related to Jake Taylor and telling Jake Taylor, hey, how are those knees, and just being straightforward, and because that's how Jake Taylor was. He was conservative catcher, and him playing with Jake Taylor and messing him around wouldn't work. But just telling Jake Taylor, hey, you better be imagining you're good, because that's the only thing that's going to get you through being thrown. And then of course Jake Taylor second base and throws the ball and it bounces. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember those days. Yeah, that's how my catcher issues would be. Like, okay, I'm gonna nail you out trying to steal on me. Hell no. Throw the ball, dribble down to second base. Yeah.
It's like you're skipping stones, right? As like a three hopper. You're like, whoa, 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay, there we go. Got you almost.
I almost got you. At least
would have got you.
He's got there.
But yeah. So, overall, Mike, I thought this was a great movie. And I picked it because of the Indians logo. I have the hat on backwards on purpose. I don't wear it in public anymore. I don't want to show it. And my little brother talks to me about a lot of people in the Native community, whether they wear the Indians hat or they wear the Washington, football team logo or such. A lot of people are, just desensitized to the fact. So I'm hoping that this, not wearing it around so much as a baseball lover and as a coach will kind of help, on my end, not be so much, promoting it. Whereas I could promote, I have Negro League hats I could wear. I have, old school vintage New York Giants hats I could wear. I have a lot of different baseball choices, a lot of different cool hats where baseball lovers will still respect me for the retro, aspect of it, but in a way that's not offensive to certain, individuals or people that I love, especially because me, it's a little more selfish, to not, and now really don't want to wear it.
Yeah. And it's, you could be a fan of your team. You just don't have to be racist doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's really that simple. And so one more character I think we need to discuss is Eddie Harris. I'd like to more get on your sort of point of view before we go. What did you think of sort of him, and especially in the very beginning when he's talking about
Crisco, Bardol, Vagisil. Any one of them will give you another 2 to 3 inches drop on your curveball. Of course, if the umps are watching me close, I just rub a little jalapeno inside my nose, get it running, and if I need to load the ball up a little, just wipe my nose.
You put snot on the ball?
I haven't got an arm like yours. I got to put anything on it I can find. Someday you will, too.
Obviously, that's all against the rules. Do you think pitchers actually still do that, or do you think what is your thoughts on him as the old veteran?
Yeah, I thought that was quite the crafty way, right? We've heard stories all the way, from like Gaylord Perry. He's probably one of the most well-known, ball doctors ever. He has, whether he has a nail file or some type of, sandpaper, or using something, any type of clip or something to kind of get a little extra grip or a little divot in the ball. It was funny just for, when Eddie Harris does it, he's just looking for grip to, he's looking for slippery, right? He's not looking for grip. So a lot of guys you see the Pineda on the Yankees or a few guys recently, but they have the pine tar on their neck or pine tar on their wrist. They're just trying to get that for grip. So those guys, I think when you use pine tar, I'm okay with it, right? Because if a guy's throwing upper nines and he's trying to hit the inside corner, do you really want him having a little bit of sweat on that ball and let the ball run up under chin a little bit, right? You're kind of like, cool, yeah, keep that grip. But when you have guys like Harris that are throwing, poo slingers throwing 70 poo, and they're looking for every piece of break they can get, yeah, and then he starts slicking that ball up a little, and then, a lot of times too, if the ball, like for instance, we have waterlogged baseballs, right? So if the ball is even off a little bit, it kind of hits the bat a little weirder, and it kind of could spin off. So like in the batting cages, I could tell when we have our good baseballs, when we have our older baseballs, and we have our cloth covering baseballs, right? I could tell which ones I hit. So perhaps it's like a 0.0001%, difference maker on your hitting, percentage chance or whatever. But I don't know. I just don't like the whole idea of like pitchers, using stuff like that to get it more slick, because that gives them more break. And I'm a fastball hunter. So I'm not looking for anything off speed ever. And I'm always adjusting off speed. So having to adjust to something that breaks more than what you're used to, I think is a little bit, cheating. But this is baseball, and it was built on cheating, and it is won by cheaters, and it will be preserved by cheaters. So, you could say the 94 strike, it would have been much worse if it wasn't for steroids and Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, and Barry Bonds coming on after, right? Because I just totally ruined the public's, faith in baseball. But then, we have a home run chase. We have another home run chase. Okay, we have records to break. Yeah, we like baseball now.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what brought them all back was that whole every time you open up the newspaper in the morning, Sosa hit 2 home runs, Mark McGwire hit 2. This race is this. It's oh my God, are they going to break the record? Now that they broke the record, who's going to win the home run derby? Is it going to be Sosa? Is it going to be McGwire? And all that. So, oh man, did they ever? They hit the jackpot. That's what definitely brought the fans back after that strike was just that whole juicing and that whole. And I remember even it was Spalding who makes the baseballs, right? Spalding. And so I'm reading an article about it, and Spalding's strike, because a lot of they thought the balls were juiced, that the balls were more tightly wound or whatever. And Spalding's like, I don't even know what you people are talking about. We've been doing this since like 1908, and the same manufacturing balls we put out in 1908, we're putting out now. So don't be looking at us. And it was just like all these conspiracy theories and all that great stuff. But yeah, it definitely helped bring the people back.
Totally. And tying it back to, Harris as the pitcher, we were talking about, you and I had mentioned, we were talking before the show started, Mike, where I was pitching BP to my kids yesterday. And some of my players, I throw a ball outside and I throw another ball outside. And my natural reaction is to lick my finger. Right. And obviously with, the whole coronavirus going on right now, I have a mask on and everything. But what I would do was I would just put my hand up to this. And I pretend to lick my finger. And then I mentally, I got you. I'll throw a strike now. So sometimes just like the grip that you're used to mentally helps so much when you're throwing a pitch. So perhaps, maybe the Badger Steel isn't the best, thing to put on your finger for baseball grip. But if it's been something you've used before for a slide piece and really break one off in the corner, hey, maybe that is, the mental piece that you need to help execute that pitch.
The one thing too, also is not only bringing up a mental thing, which is really good, but and habits. There wasn't really anything like that that I can remember in Major League where, because baseball players are so habitually together. I mean, you get all these guys that do habits. Same breakfast every morning before game time. Run a lap, 2 miles before whatever. All these people have rituals and habits. We didn't really see that in this movie, I don't think.
Yeah, and that was one thing I was kind of wishing there'd be a little bit more of. Willie Mays Hayes does a little bit of that bat flip where he kind of tosses the bat and then he catches it off the home plate before he walks up. Jobu had more. Not Jobu. Sorry, Cerrano had the. He kind of talks to Jobu and looks at the bat. But yeah, there weren't that many habits. In baseball, such as superstitious sport. AJ Przinsky, if he got off, the former catcher, if he got out of the bed the wrong side, he would get back in bed and roll out the other way because he was convinced after a couple good years that he had to get out of bed on one side. Larry Walker, I think he's Hall of Famer. He was obsessed with the number 33. So they got married at 333. You know what I mean? He's just like, they're doing all these crazy things, always doing this at 333, always having this at 33. And it's just crazy to see that happens. But yeah, for such a great baseball movie to not have as many superstitions or as many little, Nomar Garciaparra playing with his batting gloves 45 times per at bat. You know what I mean? It's like things like that. You're like, oh, yep, I know that. Or Chef just like constantly wiggling everything. Somehow having barrel placement to launch a ball is just like craziness, but also it's soothing. So there's a method to the madness, and there's parts of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, because when you're batting, that's one of the most isolated moments in all of sports. Outside of team sports, I guess golf could be more isolating, but in team sports, when you're one guy's batting and he has to get a hit against 9 other guys and a bunch of other guys in the dugout plotting against you, that's not the easiest thing. I thought that was, like you said, I definitely wish there'd been more superstitions or more, they did like the knee down and like lift the leg up in the dugout type thing. So I guess they did a few kind of lukewarm ones, but yeah, nothing that like made you be like, yep, I like that.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about the leg thing, but yeah, it was very quick. It wasn't really, as we've seen, probably maybe if we could, like Bull Durham, you could really see those kind of things, but yeah.
Breathe through the eyelids.
Totally. Yeah. As far as the movie overall, what would you give it out of 10? What were your parting thoughts on this movie?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as a baseball lover, as a kid, I'd be like, 9.5 out of 10. But, looking back at it now and seeing which parts are a little bit, perhaps not done as much as you like, or seeing baseball things that aren't as baseball as they should, I'm definitely going to give it an 8.5 out of 10, just because in my opinion, it's my favorite baseball movie outside of The Sandlot. And so it's a much different category because it's rated R, Sandlot's PG. So for me, it's my favorite movie of baseball about adults, that I get to watch over and over and over, because I'm definitely a comedy lover. So for me, I would give it about an 8.5 out of 10, just because the allure of it, the cast, what they did, how well they did on everything. They even got a bunch of Brewers in there to be the Yankees, right? Because they shot the movie in Milwaukee because the Cleveland Browns needed the Cleveland area for training. So there's just like crazy things, like the way they're able to kind of maneuver and manage and work around it. Yeah, I definitely would give it that high of a score. I wish they give a little bit of a higher one, but obviously there are some small things that we didn't appreciate as much. I know you're a much tougher movie buff than I am. So what were your final thoughts and kind of what you would grade it overall out of 10?
I think definitely an 8 for me. I thought the love story was sort of wonky.
Yeah.
It didn't really mesh to me. I just felt like it was awkward and didn't really smooth right. As far as like the baseball scenes, it was pure comedy. It was really good. The acting was really top notch as well. Characters really they really embodied the characters. So I think 8 out of 10. Pretty much right. Some of the baseball scenes just weren't very realistic. Carrying the bat around the field. Just different things like that where it's just like that ain't gonna happen. Definitely 8 out of 10 is probably something I would probably land on.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those movies where they start to make more movies after Major League 2 than even the debacle that was Major League 3, that they don't even want to call Major League 3 because it's so embarrassing. Right? So there's, people have troubles with that. So I think, it's such a great movie. Just leave it alone. Perhaps they might have a reunion coming up soon, but even then, there'd just be more for us old timers that kind of like it and, remember from back in our childhoods watching this movie and growing up to, humor like this. So, yeah, I definitely enjoyed it, and I think it was it was a great baseball movie as we get forward, moving forward here into next week, where I believe baseball's going to start back up. We'll see how everything goes and take it week to week, see kind of see how everything goes, and just keep our fingers crossed that all our players and all these guys that we watch stay safe, because there is a human element and aspect to it as well. Like, yes, they're entertainers, and yes, we might have them on our fantasy team, but they have children, they have grandmothers, they have parents relying on them and making that money to support. A lot of them are playing from different countries, so a lot of them are sending money back home as well to developing countries for their families to have food and shelter. So just hoping that we're able to play safe sports soon. But just moving forward, which keep on watching good sports movies to keep our morale high, right? Definitely boost the mood. This movie totally helped me out the last couple of days.
Yeah, me too. And it's such a joy to watch. Totally. So stay subscribe to us, push that like button, do all those great things. It really helps us grow as a channel. We really appreciate you guys doing that. Neiko, thank you very much for coming along with this, and have a great Sunday and have a great rest of your week.
You as well, partner. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Take care, bud.
See ya.
Bye-bye.